What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 72. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on another episode to discuss a new film that we got to check out in theaters. Super excited for this week. I have not put out a video in a while, but now I'm making up for it because I am going to be covering George Miller's new film, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. So super excited just because of the fact that I really enjoyed 2015's Mad Max Fury Road with Tom Hardy, Charlize Theron, and a lot of different actors that came out of the film. And so when I found out that they were actually making a prequel, I was like, okay, well, what is it? Where is it going to take place? On who's it going to follow? And then you see the title card, Furiosa. So again, it really kind of hyped me up. I really enjoyed 2015's movie because of the way that they showed all these different types of color, the way that they shot different types of scenes. I really enjoyed it. So super excited. Didn't even have to see any trailers. I was already all in. Now, ended up taking some time off, so that's why this review is coming a little bit late, but I was able to check it out in Dolby Cinema. So let's go ahead and discuss some of my overall thoughts about the movie, and then we'll kind of dive into a little bit about my pros, cons, favorite moments, performances, and whether I consider Furiosa timeless. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. Overall thoughts, not spoiling it too much, but I thought this film was super fun to watch in theaters. There's just so much going on the big screen. Everything is trying to get your attention, whether it's this crazy action, these big rigs and trucks that are crashing into each other and exploding, to the different types of characters that are on screen, playing these outlandish and exaggerated characters as well. But it was just so much is going on. But it was, to me, at least personally, I enjoy that. I enjoy when things are trying to grab your attention because it just helps me get into the world of what I'm watching. So whether it's Furiosa, it takes me into the world of what they're living through and what they're trying to do to survive or trying to do in order to, make it out alive in whatever their situation might be. I love it when movies can take me out of my real life, like Dune Part 2. That film immediately takes me to Arrakis and immediately makes me feel like, oh man, I'm following Paul and Chani throughout these different types of adventures that they're facing. And that's exactly what Furiosa did for me. I will say, and I know it's going to be really hard for me not to, but my mind immediately thinks about how I can compare this to Mad Max Fury Road. And I can say that it still has that great shot and cinematography that the first film had. It also has a lot of different types of colors that are used. I will say that Mad Max Fury Road did use a lot more of these kind of saturated colors where the blues and the oranges are very, very exaggerated. Whereas in Furiosa, it's not as much. However, I will say that some of these zoom in shots are freaking awesome. They zoom in like on the shoulder of a character, almost like it's like a third person view. Like you're playing a video game. They do that a lot when they're on the big rigs and they're driving around. I thought that was really well done. And then a lot of the action sequences are just shot to perfection. So I really enjoyed that. I also got to call out Chris Hemsworth and Anya Taylor-Joy. They're the two main actors in this film. Their characters are the standouts of the movie. Each one portrays their characters in such different ways, right? Furiosa is much more of a serious type of a character, doesn't talk too much. And then you have this character that Chris Hemsworth plays in Dementis, who is just outgoing. He's just very psychotic in a way, and he's just doing all this different stuff just to be a little bit extra, but they both balance each other off so well. So again, I really enjoyed those unique performances. And not only them, but all the other characters as well. You get to kind of see what their motivations are. But overall, a very fun movie, a lot of action, a lot of things that are going on screen. And the story overall just kind of flows really well. And 2.5 hours to me went by really fast. So definitely enjoyed my time watching Furiosa. Let's segue into some of my pros. First pro, I've already called it out, but action sequences, they were top notch in this movie. I would even say, again, my personal opinion, these action sequences are probably some of the best of 2024 of any movie that I've seen. Again, I've seen a lot of great stunts and action in Fall Guy. I've seen great action sequences in Dune Part 2 and even great scenes in, at least some of them, in Monkey Man. But all of those just do not compare to how crisp and clean these shots are within Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. It is just unbelievable. The realism, they don't cut too much so that it makes it hard for the audience to catch up and keep up with the action. And what I love most is that there is no shaky camera. That was one of my biggest complaints of Monkey Man earlier this year, is that I was really excited to see a lot of different types of action, very similar to, choreography like in John Wick, but there was just too much shaky camera that took me out of the experience. Here, whenever they were on big rigs or cars and crashing into each other in explosions, whenever there was, these bike riders going around, nothing was shaking. Everything was very clean and perfect, and I freaking appreciated that. So I love it when when teams that are making these films don't have to leverage shaking camera to add tension. No, the tension will be there by what the characters are dealing with, and that was just spot on. So I really enjoyed that. Second pro for me was the score. The score that would play throughout the different action sequences and what Furiosa was doing when she's on a big rig, it was just really well done by the composer. What they were able to do is especially in scenes where something was getting very intense, you could actually hear the music rise another level, then rise and rise and rise, and it just kept getting more and more intense until it just hit a climax, and then you would just hear it stop. I freaking enjoyed how they were able to kind of implement a lot of different types of music in the background, again, to either emphasize what certain individual was doing in actions or whether something crazy was about to occur. So not only just around the character Furiosa, but really everybody, when they were going down a specific road, when they were going to a specific town, again, the music was just really well done, and they curated it for different types of scenes just to add a little bit more emotion, a little bit more tension, which I really appreciated. Third and final pro for me on Furiosa was I really enjoyed seeing more of the world building of the Mad Max universe. When we watched 2015 Mad Max A Fury Road, it really only takes place literally on a road, and then you get to see the Citadel, where Immortan Joe, the villain, the antagonist, lives, and he basically tries to conquer and takes over, and he basically rules with like an iron fist over the people that live in the Citadel. Here in Furiosa, I really enjoyed that we had to see more than just the Citadel. And that's one of the things that I didn't even think about before going into the movie theaters. It's like, well, where is this going to take place? Because the first film, it's a very simple story. It just takes place on a simple road, and then eventually hits the Citadel, where Furiosa and Mad Max end up helping each other to help the city and get rid of Immortan Joe. In this film, for Furiosa, we actually get to see two new locations that are actually called Bullet Farm and Gastown. Both still ruled by Immortan Joe, but really enjoyed the fact that they expanded what other cities might be in play. How do other people live in these other towns as well? And what do they have to do to survive? And again, I really enjoyed that each one kind of focused on a different type of a resource. Bullet Farm, as you could probably tell, kind of try to get as many resources for weapons. And then you have Gastown, which obviously provides a lot of the gas for the big rigs as they kind of move different types of resources around to the different cities. Again, I really enjoy when not only can the movie that you're watching take you into their world, but it also kind of expands it if you've been in this world before. Again, like I mentioned, in Fury Road, it was very simplistic. You just got to see a citadel, and then you got to see a road, and it was all sand, all desert. Here, you got to experience a lot of different types of environments where, again, groups like the War Boys might be dealing with, or these different types of folks that live in Gastown and what they have to face. So a lot of great stuff. So I really loved the expansion of this Mad Max universe. All right, I do gotta go into a couple of cons that I did have about the movie, unfortunately. Again, nothing that really made me say like, oh, I hated this movie. Never anything like that. But I did have a couple things that I wanted to call out. First con that I have is actually in the third act. At the beginning, I guess, let me back up a little bit. At the beginning of the movie, she has to hide that she is a woman, because if she ends up being revealed as a woman, then Immortan Joe will try to get her, have her be one of his brides, and then obviously will only be living to provide more and more children. So what she does is that she basically shaves her head, cuts off her hair, and pretends to go mute so that she never has to reveal that she is a woman. What I found very weird is that in the third act, she has her hair out, she is not covering herself up, she's talking, and she's actually talking to Immortan Joe and some of his other war generals, but nobody seems to care that she's a woman. And so that kind of weirded me out. I was like, oh, aren't they just going to capture her now that she's revealed herself? Now she doesn't have the secret that she's either mute or that she was pretending to be a guy. So, but nothing ended up happening. So I thought it was a little bit weird to me. It probably went over my head of maybe because she's like a specific general for a big rig, that maybe that kind of gives her a little bit of that amnesty, I guess, or immunity. But I don't know. I just kind of found it very weird that nobody paid attention to that she was a woman at the end. I thought they were immediately going to capture her and then kind of, try to put her in jail with the rest of the brides. But again, that may have just been missed on my side. Second con that I had about the film was they actually had a little montage describing about a 40-day war that was going to take place between Dementis, who was played by Chris Hemsworth, and Immortan Joe. They were going to go into a war, and they were basically trying to fight for Gastown and different types of resources. And they were hyping it up to be one of these big wars that's going to be remembered in history. And then it's really only like a montage, and then it kind of just finishes up in like 5 minutes. And I was like, what? That's it? I really wish, this is what my con, I really wish they could have expanded on that war. I know that, again, it's 2.5 hour movie. They're trying to provide as much context about Furiosa and what her motivations are and what she's dealing with in her life. But I really wish that they could have expanded on this war, because it seemed like it could have been something very epic. I would have even appreciated just kind of cutting off a couple of other things in the film and maybe expanding more on this 40-day war and seeing, again, why it was taking place, how big the battlefield may have been, because it was never made clear where this war was taking place, like in the exact geographical location. And again, how long did it actually, how many men were lost? And again, we knew that it lasted 40 days, but who was sent over there? Was Immortan Joe ever in the battle? Things of that nature. So I wish they could have been expanded a lot more, just to, again, provide more color and, again, expand the universe of Mad Max and saying these different types of wars that have taken place. Now let's go ahead and dive into my favorite performance of the movie. Like I stated at the beginning, Chris Hemsworth as Dementis and Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa, they are both the standouts of this movie. They both killed it in their roles. If I had to choose one, I'm going to go with Dementis, played by Chris Hemsworth. He was just such a funny character that would just say these ridiculous and outlandish things. And he even went to the Citadel at the beginning and just kind of claimed, hey, whoever's the leader of the Citadel, I'm taking over. He had this like confidence and this hubris about him. And then even when he would fail, he would just turn it around and say, all right, well, maybe I should just try to learn how to be more confident like Immortan Joe, and maybe have people follow me into battle like he has the War Boys. And so he never was down on himself, even at the point to where he was going to get killed. He's like never at a point like was he begging to like be saved. He was always accepting his situation, and he was just saying the funniest things in the movie. And his charisma and his energy in the film was just perfect for me. And it seemed like a perfect character for this Mad Max universe. So Chris Hemsworth has my favorite performance of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. Really great job. Okay, moving on to my favorite moment of the movie. This one is super easy for me. This is actually the first time we get to see Furiosa in action on a big rig. And she's actually working with Praetorian Jack, who is, again, what ends up being one of her mentors, and almost seems like it's like a love interest as well, but it seems it's like it's framed more as a mentorship. They're actually on a big rig, and they're being chased down by the clan of Dementis, and it was amazing. That big rig scene was incredible. They went from basically having Furiosa be under, she's trying to escape, and then eventually she ends up helping save the big rig by wrapping up and trying to put in a new gas pipe for a gas leak that ended up occurring. She gets into the big rig as well, saves Praetorian Jack, and then she ends up turning on this little propeller that has, different types of chains and different metals, and ends up just tearing down the clan of Dementis. It was incredible, not only, again, because of the tension that was being added, the music was perfect as well. The music, this is the one that I was kind of describing at the beginning, where the music would just kind of rise every minute that the scene would go on. And there was never a moment in time where I felt like, okay, there's like a lot of CGI here. Like there's a lot of visual effects here. Like, this doesn't look good. Everything looked real. Whenever the War Boys would get hit and they would get killed or stomped on by like a big rig or a car, it never looked fake. It all looked like it was practical. And I really appreciated that whole sequence of the big rig That first chase scene was, again, amazing. My heart was racing. I freaking loved it. And really, this is a perfect segue for me to say that scene alone would make me want to recommend folks to go check this movie out in theaters. And that's going to really be my recommendation. If you have a chance, go check it out in theaters. Furiosa is, again, it's not a perfect movie. It's not going to be, again, even to me, like compared to all the other movies that I've seen so far in 2024, it's not going to be my favorite. But just because of the fact that it takes you out of the real life and it puts you into this post-apocalyptic world where you're trying to see what Furiosa has to face as she was a young girl and then growing up into the woman that she is today. It's a great story. Again, not perfect, but there's so much action, so much going on. The colors and the shots are beautiful. So I definitely recommend, if you have a chance, check this out in theaters. These films were made for the big screen. So definitely, if you have a theater near you, if you have an IMAX or Dolby Cinema, check it out. That is my big recommendation. Furiosa was a fun time. All right, now we've got into the last segment of the podcast, and this is where we're going to decide whether Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is timeless. So I've been saying a lot of great stuff. I did have a couple of cons with this film, but to be quite honest, I will have to say that Furiosa is not a timeless movie for me. It definitely has potential. I can definitely see myself maybe rewatching it in the future, but what makes it so hard is that I really loved Mad Max: A Fury Road that came out in 2015. That film to me just flowed a lot better. Now again, the story was much more simple. In Furiosa, you're trying to basically describe the history of Furiosa, the character herself. Why is she motivated? What was she dealing with before she met Morton Joe? Why is she doing the things that she's doing? And how does she learn to be so skilled and so deadly? And again, I really appreciated that story. But to me, when I compare the two films, Mad Max, that film went by even quicker. It just made much more sense to me. In this film, I think what's unfortunate is that there's so many different time jumps. There's so many things that it's kind of going to back and forth. And it's sharing time between Dementis and Furiosa. And I think that's another difference maker as compared to Mad Max Fury Road. You have Mad Max and you have Furiosa, but they're practically both dealing with the same situation and they're both on screen at the same time. So it's very easy to kind of follow the story. Not saying that it's very difficult for the film Furiosa Mad Max Saga to follow. The story definitely makes sense, but because it's jumping to so many different things, it might not flow as well as the prior film. So again, these are just my personal opinions. I still really enjoyed Furiosa, but at the moment, it is not timeless for me. It still has a lot of great things like the action, all the different types of visual effects, the music, and the performances. But once again, those are just my thoughts. I really want to hear from you guys, though. Have you had a chance to check out Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga? If you have, let me know down below in the comments. What did you think about the movie? Did you think it was timeless? Was your favorite character Dementis? Or did you have a different favorite character as well? Let me know down below. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. I really appreciate you. My name has been Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 72 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we cover a new film and decide whether it is timeless. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.